There may be some times when Dr. J. Smith and myself don't always agree with Dr. Stephen Shoemaker or other scholars. We don't always agree with each other, but we all agree that the creation of the Quran is much more complicated than most of our Muslim friends have imagined. If we are talking for the last couple of episodes about a paradigm that was called Abdul Malik al-Hajjaj paradigm and their role in creating the Quran or standardizing a text per se much later than the time of Uthman, why then was the Abdul Malik al-Hajjaj narrative lost? Why was it lost? And with me to answer this fundamental question is Dr. J. Smith. Dr. J, why was this paradigm lost given the stature of both Abdul Malik and al-Hajjaj?
Yeah, and this is where I have to say that I don't agree with Shoemaker. Remember I said at the very beginning, the very first episode, there are some things that Shoemaker says that I think are not correct, just because, first of all, he contradicts himself. We'll be getting to that in future episodes. But in this case, I think he's going off in the wrong direction because he's really held by his belief that Muhammad is the instigator of the Quran. He still believes there is a Muhammad living in Mecca, in the Hijaz, though he's going to dispute that right, left, and center in another few episodes. And because he holds to that paradigm, he has to give lip service to this idea of this memory. He spends 5 pages talking about this memory, and he talks about this memory, but all his applications and all his examples come from biblical memory, which is odd that he would use biblical memory in a biblical context and then try to apply and say, well, the same thing is happening over here.
And what we're talking about memory here for the sake of the audience. We're talking about memorizing things?
Yeah, that they remember. They had much better memory than we use today, that they're much better at that. Today, we don't like that because we read everything. We're much more textual oriented. But back in the 1st century, in the 2nd century, they could memorize everything in wholesale, and that's why that memory was very exact, and it would continue on, and that's why we can trust it, is what he's saying. Now, in this case, he's saying the memory got lost. So he's kind of talking out of both sides. It's
got lost within the span of 1 century.
That's right. This to me, that doesn't make sense. You don't lose memory of 1 century, especially when he already admits that there are codices from the time of Uthman. There were multiple codices. He talks about Ubay ibn Khalid's codex. That's not memory. He talks about Ibn Masud's codex. That's not memory. He talks about Ibn Masud's codex. That's not memory. He talks about Zayd ibn Thabit's codex. Codex means books. So he's admitting that there is textual material there. He is going to go into a whole litany of references of all of these borrowed texts. Mm-hmm. And these are Jewish and primarily Syriac Christian texts that make their way into the Quran, so he's aware of that. So these are all written material. This is not memory anymore. Yet he spends 5 pages trying to say this memory got lost between Abdul Malik and the time the traditions were written down. So you're talking about 1.5 centuries, maybe 2 centuries, because we're talking about Al-Bukhari, Sahih Muslim ibn Dawud, and that's 870. So at least a 1.5 centuries, that memory got lost. To me, that's a contradiction right there.
I want to just add one more thing about this. It seemed like if I want to take Shoemaker's argument about memory getting lost within 1 century, then Shoemaker just shut down Ibn Mujahid's whole canonization of the readings because it was based on memory. And what he's saying is, by then, the readings of Quran was different.
Yeah, well, we'll get to that, and that even takes that one problem even further. But let's get back to what he is saying. So he's trying to understand how memory of the past can be changed to the present in just within a century. And he admits that there was a Uthmanic codex, so there's the written text. May have been used, he even says, along with others by al-Hajjaj and composed in New Quran. So he is admitting at the same point that there is a text that al-Hajjaj is using. To me, that's contradictory. Why spend all this time on memory then? I would suggest a better solution. And you know where I'm going to go with this. I've said this before, and it's very clear that the Abbasids hated the Umayyads. Why talk about memory when you had a political problem here? You had a political difficulty. The Abbasids in Baghdad hated the Umayyads who were in Damascus. They've always hated them. They went to war, and they finally now conquered them in 749, mid-8th century.
And I would agree with yours because the political disagreements usually is much stronger argument.
And here you have al-Bukhari. He is given 600,000 of these akhbars, Umayyad akhbars. And what does he do? He is supposed to decide which are authentic, which are not. Well, he pretty much throws all of them out and whittles them down from 600,000 just down to 7,397. That's just 2%. 98% he throws out.
That's right.
There's the problem. They just didn't want anything Umayyad. They try to destroy it physically by burning them or destroying them by other means. Whatever way they destroy them so we don't have them today. That's what's going on. This has nothing to do with memory. This is wholesale censorship.
Right.
Standardization of a text. So it would be in the Abbasids' own interest to propose a much earlier Quran from the time of Uthman himself than to suggest that their holy book had been created by the hated Umayyads. That's what they're doing. They don't want Al-Hajjaj. They hate Al-Hajjaj. Now, they have to admit that Al-Hajjaj did 11 changes, and that's all you're going to get out of the Abbasids. They don't want any notion that this book that is now their holy book had anything to do with Abd al-Malik or with Al-Hajjaj. What's more, look at what Alfred Louis de Premer says, and Shoemaker quotes him. He's this Frenchman, and he says, listen, it didn't just end with the Abbasids. It continues on into the 10th century. What does he say? Well, he believes that the Quran was not canonized at all by Al-Hajjaj or Abd al-Malik. He says this, one should add to these considerations the fact that despite the apparent efforts by Al-Hajjaj and Abd al-Malik, it would still be some time before an inviolable text of the Quran would be universally established within the Islamic world. We hear that furtive copies of some of the companion codices managed to survive Al-Hajjaj's Persia, even into the 10th century in some instances. Folks, don't just think that the Abbasids created the Quran and then put it back to Uthman, saying that they had finished the story. It continues to be added to, even in this case, up past the 10th century.
Right. That's a very powerful argument. In other words, I mean, is it fair to say this, and Jay, you can answer this, I mean, the way you feel about it. Is it fair to say that Uthman really was the progenitor of the process? Al-Hajjaj and Abd al-Malik solidified and selected whatever they liked, and the Abbasides finalized?
I'm going to disagree with you on that.
I'm just asking.
No
I'm just asking.
Uthman, there is no Abu Bakr, Umar, and Ali.
I disagree with you. There is an Uthman, but there was a process that was fluid.
Can you show me his name?
Well,
Can you show me from Medina that he lived?
Anyway, we'll argue that later.
That's coming, and he's going to show you. He's going to prove you wrong.
Okay,
Shoemaker's going to prove you wrong. You've not read this part of the book.
But if he talks about Muhammad, he cannot disprove other parts.
Is there a Muhammad in Mecca?
What I'm saying, if he agrees,
he can't even find it.
Well, that's fine. That's fine. But we can always argue that there is lost material, or at least maybe there was stuff on memory that later was added in writing.
It's not even that.
Well, the Abbasides somehow
Wait till you find out where it all comes from.
It's okay. That's your stance. My stance is different.
Oh boy, I'm going to have a good debate.
So what are we going to talk about next?
All right, we're not going to debate it right now. We're going to move on. And what I want to do is I just want to look at Hoyland and his masterpiece.
Robert Hoyland. Yeah,
Robert
absolutely.
Hoyland. We do need to talk about his masterpiece that he wrote.
Seeing Islam as Other Side.
Yeah, I want to just pull out a few things before we move on, because we do need to get. Obviously, we need to get to the Quranic manuscripts. But before we get to the Quranic manuscript, we do need to give lip service to Hoyland. He's done such a great job, Dr. Robert Hoyland. So that's going to be next.
Absolutely, and his collection of testimonies was absolutely powerful. When I first was exposed to it, I can see why it is important for us to talk about it. Until next time, folks, have a blessed day. Thank you for watching this video. Be sure to like and subscribe to our channel, CIRA International, and click on the bell so that you receive notifications whenever we publish a new video or go live. I would also like to appeal to you to consider becoming a Patreon patron by clicking the link right below. By doing so, you can give towards the production of these videos. There are also other options for you where you can give to our channel. I thank you from the bottom of my heart.